I'm going to throw this one back up here really quick because I mean I thought this was maybe it's not as egregious as I thought it was, but it's pretty bad.
Contrast the two campaigns here. On the right, you have Hulk Hogan and the UFC, and a version of masculinity where you're very straightforward and candid and say what everyone's thinking, and you risk offending people. And
okay, so this is conventional masculinity. Right? Everything else that what a great screen cap that is. Everything else that Scott Galloway gets into is this mealy mouth, wishy-washy, man bun, feminized version of masculinity. Now he's basically talking about two different sides of masculinity here. But he's not. One of these is masculine, is conventionally masculine, and the other is conventionally feminine. Let's go.
That version of masculinity worked in 2016, where people felt for 30 or 40 years the establishment had just been lying to them and giving them a bunch of blah blah to make them feel good in the short run and wasn't being honest with them. The type of
Okay, so that's masculinity. That's the Trump masculinity. This we're supposed to make that association. Obviously, Hulk Hogan. There, it's this ridiculous machismo of a. Oh, thank you very much, some guy. Whoa, wait a minute. Female solipsism looks like, well, I know all the other girls do that, but I don't. I mean, I do that, but I don't do it. And for the same reasons that the other girls do it. I'm a good girl. I'm the one that doesn't do it the same as the other girls do it. That's part of it. Definitely part of it. So we'll come back to that. Anyways, what Scott Galloway is getting into here as far as like the differences in masculinity is we have one form of masculinity, which is the Trump form, the Republican form, the those asshole machismo guys that it worked in 2016. No, it works throughout World War II, World War I, probably the Civil War, probably in every single epoch of human history, right up until, oh, I don't know, the sexual revolution, which of course Scott's a boomer, so he knows lots about that. So anyways, just catching things up here, conventional masculinity is what it is. And this is why I don't use the term traditional masculinity very often. I only use traditional masculinity in terms of like sort of cultural effects, right? Or it could be racial effects, it could be ethnic effect, whatever it is. And the reason why I do that is because different traditions and different cultures have different traditions. So, but there are conventional aspects of masculinity that are across the board. And so I try to focus on those things so that I'm looking at something of a more objective picture of what masculinity is, as opposed to like what different cultures how they might express that. So for instance, when the American Psychological Association, the APA, decided to deem traditional masculinity as a cause for concern in 2017. And then by 2018, 2019, they decided that it belonged as a personality disorder in the DSM. So these are your masters and your priests of psychology deeming really what amounts to conventional masculinity as in some way a character flaw, or in some way a neuroses, or in some way a personality disorder that is to be sort of treated and with therapy. And of course that therapy has to be something along the lines of what Scott's about to describe here when it comes to walls. This is the walls form of masculinity.
Masculinity now, and the type of masculinity that is really resonating is walls. This is what we want from men. We want a guy who can coach football.
You notice that? This is what we want from men. We don't want Hulk Hogan. We don't want somebody who can go. We don't want somebody who can actually kick ass and save women from themselves and save women from being, beaten up on the streets of Manhattan when they're just randomly throwing punches at girls. Remember that back in March, April of this year? I remember Tim Pool said something to the effect of like, good, I'm glad women are getting like punched in the face. And people were like, oh, what are you talking about? Well, he only said that because it was bringing to light the fact that, first of all, women believe that they could defend themselves. They can handle any. They're superheroes and they're victims at the same time. It's Schrodinger's feminist, right? It's the idea that, feminism basically teaches two conflicting ideas at the same time. One, that women are superheroes and they can do anything, and anything is possible for them. But at the same time, they're also victims, and that's interchangeable depending on the situation and the circumstances. So if young men are just randomly walking around the streets of New York, smashing women in the face and running off, and playing games by just like whatever the knockout game is, I have no idea what it was, but then what's the first thing they say? Well, where are the men who are going to protect us? Where are the men who are going? Where are the strong men? And of course, those are the guys who, the one guy who does step up, he's the one that goes to jail for it. He's the one that, for beating the ass of some guy who was like trying to beat the hell out of some girl. That guy goes to jail. So that's what you voted for, ladies. So that's number one. And number two is they don't really want that guy. They don't want that. And they need to have their emotionalism checked by empiricism. In this case, the emotionalism is, well, we want a guy like Walls. We want a football coach. We want a guy who's like, this is the masculinity we want. This guy is not the guy that's going to go and put his face in front of another man's fist to defend milady's honor. Okay, this guy, you think this guy is going to be the one that's going to go save some chick off of the streets of Manhattan from getting beat up? I don't think so.
Football, who protects his nation for 24 years. His instincts as a man are to protect and be empathetic and to be gentle and to be understanding.
No, those are traditionally and classically, conventionally feminine qualities. Those are not masculine qualities. Now, it's not to say that men can't lack some sort of capacity to sort of be understanding and all that, be protective, wherever the fuck that means. But the thing is that we have been leaning towards that kind of masculinity, or whatever the fuck that even amounts to, and trying to lean away from this macho bullshit, machismo stuff since he was at Woodstock, since the rise of the sexual revolution. Since the sexual revolution, that's exactly what we've done. And here we are again. And I mentioned this to Myron on our interview. And I said, look, I've been on your show. I've been on Fresh and Fit several times. I've been on other shows as well where this has happened, but I've been on his show, and I've been sitting next to 18, 19, 20, 22-year-old girls who are essentially repeating and parroting back the same vernacular and the same lines as Betty Friedan and Gloria Steinem. And that's exactly this is what Scott Galloway is doing in the 21st century, saying, oh, we need to get back to this kind of masculinity. Bullshit. It doesn't fucking work. That's why. Because it's not masculinity. It is femininity is what it is. When we're talking about like, oh, we need to go, sit around a drum circle and talk about our feelings, or float in some fucking fat manatees in some sensory deprivation tank and talk it out and cry it out and anger it out and everything else. That's what chicks do, man. That's what chicks do. That's female therapy is what that is. That's not what men do. That's not a conventionally masculine way of dealing with problems. So yes, do men need to get off their ass and do some things? Yeah, sure they do, but they don't need to do it like Walls. Okay, they don't need to be the coach. Oh boy, what a nice way of that is keeping the slave on the plantation is what that is. That's basically all Scott Galloway is talking about here, is get the slave back on the plantation. And I pointed this out, like I said, to Myron on the Thursday. If you're wondering where that is, it's on their channel. It's on Rumble, and I want to say there's probably clips of it on their YouTube as well, which I've got some clips that are coming up as well from that. But if you're trying to find the entire interview, you'll find it on Rumble. You'll find it on the Fresh and Fit Rumble channel. So if you want to go and look that up, it's already out. But yeah, the guy is he's a lady man. Look at his children. Yeah. Well, the problem with this is it sounds good. It sounds like masculinity. It sounds like, well, yeah, that's what we really want. We don't want an alpha. We want a beta with a side of alpha when we need that alpha to come out. That's really sort of this feminist, gynocentric fantasy right now, is that men will be there to facilitate the reality of women, to facilitate the safety, to facilitate every life plan. I put this out. I remember put this one tweet out on Twitter at one point, and it was a very short tweet. And I said, look, men do not owe women a better life. Oh my God. So many women, men came out of the woodwork. Well, you have to put her before your needs and everything else. And every guy who I've ever said needs to get their mental point of origin straight, or how their mental point of origin has been sort of corrupted over the course of a lifetime. All of that came out of the woodwork. Everything came out of the woodwork when I said, Leslie, you do not owe a woman a better life. End of story. That's it. And I'll tell you, the thing is the reason why that rubbed people the wrong, it was like petting a cat backwards. It was like it rubbed people the wrong way. And I was like, why is this so like people could tell you, like, they couldn't tell you exactly why it was like petting a cat backwards, but it did. And it felt like that. Like, it felt weird to have somebody like sort of vocalize it or articulate it like that. And of course, then everybody wants to say, well, women don't owe you sex after a date. Women don't owe you this. Women don't owe you that. Like, there always had to be like sort of this counterbalance. That's a yin and yang kind of thing, right? And that only happens when you expose sort of this unflattering truth about female nature, which, by the way, is what female solipsism does, is it exposes, this is an unflattering aspect of female nature. It can be. I don't think that it has to be, but I think that nature and evolution selected for women who have a solipsistic nature, have some sort of like solipsism is part of the evolved mental firmware.